Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Nurturing Astrology podcast. I'm Dominique Jaramillo, your astrologer and host. I believe astrology can fast-track personal growth, improve relationships, and empower parents. On this show, I will bring you practical guidance and insight from my own work, studies, and life experiences, as well as interview experts to bring you stellar wisdom from other teachers and professionals to inspire you on your journey. I'm so glad you're here and thanks for tuning in. So sit back, enjoy the show, and be sure to follow, like, and subscribe to catch every new episode as soon as it drops. Your shares and reviews are also much appreciated to help more people benefit from nurturing astrology. Okay, let's dive into today's show. Hi, everyone, and welcome back to the Nurturing Astrology podcast. I'm Dominique, your astrologer and host. I'm back with another insightful interview for you. And today, our guest is Michelle Holling-Brooks of the Unbridled Change Method. So to tell you a little bit about her, Michelle is an author, trauma-informed specialist, somatic healing coach, healing and spiritual arts teacher and practitioner, astrologer, archetypal consultant, and a little bit of a rebel and soul embodiment activist. In addition to founding Unbridled Change in 2008, she is also a creator of the Unbridled Change Method, the bridge of connection, which establishes a trauma-informed method for supporting clients to establish a secure connection for fully living, loving, and leading their authentic lives. I'm super excited to get to know Michelle and to share all of her wisdom with you. Let's get started. Hi, Michelle. Welcome.
Welcome, welcome. I'm so excited to be here. Thank you for having me.
My pleasure. I'm really excited to get to know you, and it's been nice to meet you. We've been chatting a little bit already, and I was like, let's get to it because there's so much juicy stuff here that I want to be able to share with everyone. So since we're new to each other too, I'm excited to hear a little bit more about your story, your journey into the healing arts, into astrology. So I'd love for you to do a little intro in terms of your journey to where you are today and the work that you do. So take the floor and share about you.
Oh, well, thank you, Miss Dominique. I'm excited. And there is a circuitous route here, but they all fit together at the end, like puzzle pieces of how they kind of work together. So, I mean, the big why behind how I got into healing work, and I always like to, well, let me pause one real quick. I like to preface this and say my story is sometimes can be a little triggering. And so I invite people just to, like be like, wow, what would it be like to kind of just see that and to witness that, and then to also think of their own system of how they've had moments like mine in theirs, and see that there's a thread that they can probably find of growth and hope, and like how amazing the universe is that it dropped in little pebbles at certain times of their journey that really were just perfect for them. And so I always like to pause so that way we can ground that in that. Um, so I started this because of the wounded healer journey. That's a huge archetypal pattern. So one of the things that I am a certified archetypal consultant through Carolyn Mace's work, and she does like soul contracts and other stuff like that. And she takes the astrological wheel of the houses and like puts this beautiful human development archetypal thing on top of it. And so one of my major patterns that I have in my life is that wounded healer pattern. And so from astrology, people know it through the myth of Chiron, right? And so the Chiron in the centers and his wife Chironic, which I could go down a rabbit hole on that one, but we'll save that for a different time. But that wounded healer archetype means that there is medicine within us, but unfortunately, the way that medicine is activated, the way we give our gifts, is going to be through a wound. And so that's how I got into the healing things. Is when I was 13 years old, I was bit by a mosquito that had equine eastern encephalitis. And I ended up slipping into a coma. And because at the same time that virus was like really wreaking havoc in my mind and my brain, it dominoed into spinal meningitis at the same time. So my brain stem was swelling outward and the lining of my brain was swelling inward, and the two together equaled a super unhappy brain. And then I ended up slipping into the coma. And of course, for my parents, this is a conscious parenting thing. So that's why I was like, well, let me give you a, it's like this was a really like hard time for them, because they didn't know. This was in 1990, brain science was just coming out. They were like, look, we don't know what's going to wake up. We don't know if she will wake up and what she will be if she does, because these are some pretty core parts of her brain that are getting hit pretty hard right now. Obviously I did wake up. Hello.
You're here.
I'm here. But the way I woke up, that is what the wounded healer journey was. So I was deaf from all of the swelling that was happening and I was blind, but not like dark blind, like white blindness. So light and energy was just so bright to me because that's where the visual cortex is, and that's where most of the swelling was, that it just was absolutely painful to try. And it was like an aperture that was open too wide and too much was getting in, and it was just blowing out all the circuits with incredible amount of pain. So 13 years old, I'm deaf, I'm blind. I'm also got paralyzed from the middle of my back down. So I could move my arms, but I couldn't move my body at all. So those are pretty big things to happen to a 13-year-old. But the fourth thing that was the bigger issue is I woke up completely blank. So I didn't know I was Michelle. I didn't know anything about anything, like my family, words, language, what humans were, what labels were, all of that completely wiped out. So I didn't know I was a Michelle. I didn't know I was a human. I didn't know you were a human. I didn't know what any of those things meant. All I knew is that I was in a body that I didn't know was a body. And it was incredibly painful and incredibly disorganized, and everything hurt. Everything felt like an attack because I didn't understand anything. I didn't understand when people touched me to move me, or I was like a wild animal and I would flare. Well, I had a halo because they had to cut open the back of my skull. So I couldn't flare. So they had to strap me down. You know what I mean? And like all of these things were happening to me that I just kept registering as assaults and traumas. But there were people trying to help me. They were the nurses, they were the doctors. And I didn't understand that because I had no context to like refer it to or to work with. Um, and so that moment and the healing journey that happened from that, of like reclaiming of me physically, and then the spiritual, emotional, mental side of me, really launched me on the journey of that wounded healer. So that was the starting point for me, and that also really guided me into why I do what I do and how I work with people to really reclaim that true self, because that was the journey that I ended up on, because I didn't know who that was and all of that thing. So let me pause there before I keep going.
I think we have to do another episode on Chiron. Immediately I'm going, oh yeah, we need to talk about that. Because I think that Chiron is it's huge for everyone. And I know that a parent usually will go, oh, I wonder what their wound is. And I always tell parents, like, it doesn't mean that, the wound is even something that happened here, but how much are you going to like nurture or perpetuate or like, help that healing process, regardless if it's something like crazy like what you went through, but also like the simplest things, in terms of daily activity and supporting them. So I think that Chiron is a fascinating deep dive for sure, that I'm sure it sounds like you could bring so much insight and wisdom to, for, parents that start looking at Chiron. Their own, is where you should look at first, right?
Yeah, just start with put the Oscar de Max on yourself first, because that's going to totally change how you're going to be able to hold the fact that Chiron's a part of our natal wheel, because we all have wounding and we're all carrying generational wounds, right? And so to try to take that out is to take out the development, because like the wounded healer, there is medicine that's going to come forward from that. Now, for me, it took a pretty big journey to find that medicine, and it went pretty dark, pretty like for a while. But eventually being able to see that and to honor that, that's a presence and a space you can hold for somebody else that you cannot do if you're still all up in the muck and or the fairy merry world. You know what I mean? Like either one doesn't cultivate a level of presence that can come when you lean into the Chiron and you work with that and you awaken the medicine that's held within.
So you obviously didn't know about astrology or Chiron when you were going through this. So
No.
where along your journey, like you were saying, like little nuggets and things, obviously you realize later of why those things happened or the gifts that they brought and things like that. So when did you, start discovering this and these things that brought this awareness in for you about what occurred?
Yeah, so since I was a blank slate and completely wiped in, I learned really quickly to work with my other senses because all of my senses were offline, and so my intuitive senses became my five senses. I thought that that's how everybody saw the world, heard the world, felt the world, interacted with it, and I never had anybody sitting there telling me, "No, that's not how it works, Michelle," because all of that programming was gone, you know? And so I did not realize that I shouldn't be able to feel your field as much as I can feel mine. And the problem was I didn't know you were you and I was me. So that was a whole nother situation, but we'll leave that for another time. But like nobody was sitting there telling me, oh, I shouldn't be able to feel different levels of energy, or I shouldn't be able to see things this way or hear things this way. I just assumed that was all normal. And it wasn't until my five senses started coming back online that I started to have a clash. And I started to realize, oh, the way I thought I was talking to everybody, I wasn't. It was telepathic. The way I thought I was like hearing people, that wasn't real. This other, well, it was real, but it wasn't the way a hearing body hears with their five senses. So it was super confusing to me because the human world just didn't make sense. And I also became very good at being a chameleon. So like a shapeshifter to the 100th degree. If there was somebody standing in front of me and they said, Michelle, this is what I like and this is what I do, I was like, okay, that's who I am. This is what I like and this is what I, because it was the easiest way to not make myself a target of their energy system. If I didn't match them, I could feel their anger, I could feel their pain or their confusion or their worry. And I didn't have a way to separate it from me. So it just felt like a huge assault to me. And so one of the things that I learned how to do as an adaptive skill very early on, which really influences how I help teach parenting now, is I learned to just completely mimic whatever was around me, whether it matched me or not, because the person that was standing in front of me was so disconnected from their true self that all I could feel were those shadow protective parts and other stuff like that. And you just have to appease them. So I became very, very good at appeasing, which meant that the Michelle got further and further away. And I can bet like it doesn't take amnesia to have this. Everybody has this conditioning, right? Where the people around them are the gatekeepers. And those people really, if they can accept how that little being, like as how that child or how that friend wants to show up, and they're okay to let them be them, and they're okay to be themselves, and both can be honored and respected and right, you know what I mean, at the same time, and we can hold these paradoxes, then that little being or that person gets to be them. They get to show up as them, express their words, their thoughts, their ideas, how they view the world, what's their favorite thing, and both can be there. But if you're surrounded by beings that feel in their cells that that's a threat, the kiddo is going to start to dim down their dial. And that's what I did. I like turned down that dial. And so many of us have experienced that, like where that I can't bring this beautiful part of me that is my favorite thing, to that person because it's not going to fly. And when we're adults, we can pick and choose that. But as a kiddos, it's a survival game when we're kiddos. And we do need the giants around us to like us. And we do need for them to not get mad at us or to accept us or to be proud of us. And so we are willing to shift, change, and adapt, which is fabulous to be able to fit into that unit. but it also then teaches us to shift, change, and adapt in ways that are not always helpful. And that is what turns into problematic later on. So
Mm.
this is where all the different tools come in. We all want to know who we were before all that adaptation. We want to know, like, what is our core self and what does that look like? And so at 23, I had another huge moment where I had shifted so much. I was so lost. I just really felt that everything was just pain. Everything was like, I don't understand this Earth School thing. I don't want to be here. This is like over. The relationship that I was in at 23 ended in like a blaze of glory. And it was just one of those moments I was like, I'm done, and I was in my basement apartment. I took a handful of pills and I was like, I'm out. And luckily, the universe had a different plan. My beautiful companion, German Shepherd, Baron, he licked into my mouth after I had passed out and he triggered a vomit response. And when I woke up, he was looking at me with so much love. And I just felt this vision of like, I could see the way he saw me, this beautiful being, with all this light and all this love. And I was like, I don't know who that is. Like, I've never met her. I don't feel her. This Michelle that I feel is just like, one of the things that I had been told was the minute that I woke up, it was the minute that the other Michelle died. So like the daughter that they knew died, the person that all these other things. And so I didn't feel that I was worthy or precious, or I didn't understand the image that Baron was showing me. And I knew as I was like washing out the puke and the little pieces of pills from my hair, I was like, and I wiped down that mirror, I was like, I've got to go find her. Like, she's got to be real because animals don't lie. They're not like humans. I was like, she is real. She is there. And that like dove me into the healing and spiritual arts. Like, I wanted to understand from a mental health standpoint and a physiological, I mean, like, you name it, if there was a classroom, I was in it, and they all had their own systems. And so whether that was, the Enneagram or human design, archetypes, astrology, they all kind of lead, attachment styles if you go through the mental health thing, and development, and like, why is it that our brain is hardwired for survival and adaptation first, and it throws out the personal until we feel safe enough to let it come in. And then do I then always have to wait for somebody to be in front of me who will honor me and value me to feel me? And that really didn't feel like a good deal. so, so I started to pull all these pieces together to create a way in which we could build a bridge. And that's why a method is like unbridled change and the bridge of connection, because it's like willing to change up all these systems to build back that connection to myself, to my true self. And that's where I think these tools are just amazing, because they give us some insights into both the experiences that shaped us and then a little glimpse of like, without all those dials and all those adaptations, what
Mhm.
is there?
Yeah.
And can we free ourselves up from it? Versus what I also started to fall in a trap with, is I started to bog myself down with a lot of these systems and be like, oh, I'm only this or I'm only that. So I had to get myself out of that one too. But
Yeah.
we all do that.
Yes, we do. So you created Unbridled Change. So that is what, and that you were saying that's the connection. So could you explain a little bit more about Unbridled Change and your method to give us an idea of what that is and how it works and how you work with people using it?
Yeah, absolutely. So, originally, like a big part of that healing journey, the only place I felt safe was originally with horses. And so it was just slightly ironic because it was from a horse barn that I got sick, and it was from horses that I also woke up my medicine. So, it's the irony is not lost on me.
So magical, so magical. We've got an intuitive friend who works with horses and dogs, and I mean, they are magical animals for a reason. So
Yeah.
it makes total sense. Don't go ahead.
And Yeah, and so in that of working with them, they're in the moment, right? And so they and if they're given permission to be free, to have a real voice, to say yes, no, and maybe, they're going to then call you into that too, right? And so even if I was struggling or I was upset and I would be short with the horse is like, dude, you need to calm it down, Michelle, like step it back and then ask me that question again, you know? And so it became a real quick way for me to really start to sort what was happening within me. So Unbridled Change in the beginning was very much in that one because I dove into the healing work through partnering with horses. And when I brought that work to human healing, to helping humans heal their whatever that is, physical, emotional, mental, or spiritual level, it was very much in the partnership with the horse because at that point I wasn't willing to tell you that I knew I could see your energy, I could hear you, you know, like I was using the horse as like a shield and also all the sciences as the shield. So like attachment theory and developmental theory and all of these other things coming in parts work, I dove deep into those and kind of came together with a way to build a secure attachment back. And so I specialized in trauma. I specialized, obviously, because that was my thing, in working with people who had complex trauma, who had attachment ruptures. So things that went askew in their early development and or later in life at some point that really kind of got that mistrust to the outside world and ultimately a mistrust to the inside world. And so I started to realize that there were some gaps. Like you could do mindset management, or you could do like, this is your attachment style, and you can just like replace a thought with this thought, you know, dialectical behavioral therapy, and like, you know, try to build it from the like top down kind of a thing, or like breath work for the nervous system. And what was happening though is with all my clients and even in my own self as I was using, you know, my healing toolbox to try to support myself, is I realized that it all came back to, if we relied on the predictability of the world around us to feel safe and secure, we're never going to feel that way. We're
So true.
never going to get there. Right. Like I could watch every transit and like do everything and like know what the psychic weather is going to be and like match that up with my natal plan. And like I could do all that and it's still going to do something that's going to take me out of like, oh, I thought I had that down. I thought I had mitigated that. I thought I had brought that in, you know, like it's, and so instead, the real security comes in, can I stay connected to my believing in my ability to surf with life's ups and downs? How do I help myself do that? And that was like the question that launched me into starting the Bridge of Connection method and like really bringing that in. Like, first, it's like, it's not, I need the world around me to be predictable. That is the true bridge when we're little. So it's like the first bridge of the little bridge is the world around me needs to be predictable. I don't have to like it. I just need it to be predictable. And then the other one when we're little is then once I can predict it, I'm going to reach out and mom's going to come and she's going to pick me up. Now I'm going to ask the question, how do I feel about when she picks me up? Do I feel that she's open and looking for me and giving like, what's wrong? How can I help you? Like, how does that feel like I have an ability to express myself in being picked up? Or does that not feel that way? Or does it feel like a mixed bag? Well, if it feels like a mixed bag, it's no longer predictable. I go dark. I only ask for the things when I absolutely have to ask, right? But if I feel, okay, I can predict it. I think it's at least, you know, like 60% of the time it's kind of this way. And so 60% of the time I kind of feel like they're attuned to me. Then I keep going into a willingness to reach further. So I have a willingness to bring you in when I'm happy. I have a willingness to bring you in with curiosity. I want to bring you my favorite thing and be like, look, this is the most amazing thing ever. And if you get the response back, that's like, wow, that's really cool. Thank you so much for that spider. Let me put it down, you know. Or, wow, thank you so much for that amazing thing. You know, like this rock is amazing. I think then we go into connection and we're willing to be our authentic self in there. right? And that's the why. Like, we want to be with somebody else in that joy. We want to share it. We want to be in that ebb and that flow of that heart energy exchange. But if one of those rungs of that ladder or that bridge, let's say I go share, I take that risk and I bring you my favorite thing, and it's, ugh, I do not do spiders. How dare you ever, or some other adverse response right there. If that keeps happening, what happens to when we see that thing and we want to reach for that connection to share? We get a stop sign. And that stop sign says, don't even go share that, because it's going to be disrespected. You're not going to be allowed to say or be or who you are. So the willingness goes dark. And once that willingness goes dark, the connection to your true heart light starts to dim as well. And so that's the method, is to help us rebuild that, so that it is now, can I predict myself? Can I show up compassionately to myself? Can I hold myself accountable for what I say and what I do? And the way in which I hold myself accountable, can that be with compassion, with love, with understanding, and then a willingness to try again, right? So the imperfections can be there, the yes, no's, and the maybes, the like moments of scared, moments of like courage, moments of sharing my favorite things. I'm willing to be vulnerable with myself. And if I'm willing to be vulnerable with myself, all of a sudden I can hear my heart.
Yeah.
And so that's the method. And that's what I help people do. And then the tools are all the cool tools in that Chiron toolbox.
Wow. Oh, that's so good. I've like chills and so many thoughts and responses about that. And my one of the things that came up was, I'm sure there are parents who go, "Oh, I've done that before." You know what I mean? Where I've had that response and feel bad. And there's I was just writing about something the other day and thinking about when my son was young, and I was tired and overwhelmed, and um and I yelled about something, and he was like, he had this like little shiver, and I was like, "Oh," I immediately took that in as, "Oh, that's not good. I apologize. I'm so sorry. Mommy needs a little time," that kind of thing. So I do think that
Mhm.
the cool thing about the conscious parenting is the awareness of, we're human and we make those mistakes and we have those moments. You say, spiders, I don't like spiders. Ah, get away from me. But then you can go, I like that you like it, but can you put it over there? You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
so it's really about, I think they can put parents on pins and needles of like, it's hard for me to respond in every moment in a way that's going to be perfect for your child. And that's not what we're trying to say here. It's just like the awareness of where you're at, and the more self-awareness and self-reflection we have, the more we can actually catch ourselves in that moment, or say, "Hey, mommy needs a timeout. Mommy's tired too," that kind of thing, and give yourself that compassion, and show your child that you have self-compassion, and so then they can say, "I need a timeout. Like, mom gonna be, I
Yeah.
need my timeout from everybody," especially when your kids get older and they want their time alone, and you're like, "Well, you want," then you're like, the attachment is different. I'm in that phase.
Yeah.
So there's that too, I think, is having compassion for your journey. You're on a journey all the time, and it's constant, and you're going to have moments where you don't always respond or handle things with your children the best way, but you have that reflection. That's why I always tell parents, like, there's nothing wrong with apologizing for how you reacted or you behaved, because that's going to help mitigate and hopefully heal and secure that connection. And then you're giving yourself that compassion. Am I making sense?
Yeah, you're totally on it. It actually grows the bond. And so
Yeah.
this is the beautiful thing of attachment work, that oh my gosh, I could go down a rabbit hole, but we're going to hold it back. And so it's yeah, that Gemini thing, it's a real thing, in case anybody ever wonders, like, it's real, but it's in that we, of course we can set the intention to try to do no harm, to have that beautiful attuned connection. But the attunement really comes within ourselves, because yes, we can see it through the reflection in them, but we're going to feel that, right? And if we're willing to do a repair with ourselves, if we're willing to give ourselves compassion, Then when we go to do that repair with our kiddos, it's such a powerful repair because it's genuine. It's not actually offloading to them from an archetypal point of view, the victim, right? Like, you came in, I was tired, you should have caught that I was tired, is kind of sometimes what we say without realizing that we're saying that. You know what I mean? But if we come back in and be like, wow, mommy was really tired there. I saw that you were really excited. That must have caught you off guard to not, you weren't expecting me to be tired, were you? So now I'm giving them context. Mommy was tired. You weren't expecting mommy to be tired. And so now I'm tending to their bridge because it was unpredictable, right? The very first thing is they came in expecting me to be one way. I showed up differently, that they didn't know what to do with it and it didn't feel good to them. So now in that repair, I'm giving them a bridge, and
Love
it's
it.
truly up to them to be willing to hand back out. And if they need time, they need time, but I still feel secure. So I don't feel like them accepting my apology right there in that moment is necessary for me to feel good about myself, right? Like I could be like, okay, I showing up, I can do it. Now I can honor their system. However, that little nervous system needs to unwind to heal that rupture on their side. I can actually tend to that versus in a very subtle, shadowy way. The reason why I did all of this shape shifting was because I could feel the energy field of the other person needing me to be a certain way. And to me, conscious parenting is about taking that off of the child as much as we can. And when we realize we've done it, just own it
Yeah.
and do a repair. And part of that repair is realizing, okay, that need within me, that little one within me, it's my job to go tend to her or him as just as much as it is to tend to the child that's out, the real, like our kiddo. You know what I mean? Like both of those need my conscious support as a mystical parent or as a parent, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. I totally agree. And I'm thinking of different scenarios in my head where that's happened. And even in, in my method, nurturing astrology method, it is very much about, I think it's interesting the bridge, but that connection between understanding you and your child and also your partner, like that family unit. And I found that sharing, like it's always been, astrology's been just this great objective tool even for parenting and co-parenting and understanding and communicating with my husband about our child and what he needs, and knowing that instead of like the way he responds, sometimes if it seems like, dad like alpha, like harsh or whatever, he'll
Mhm.
come back in and explain and do that, like, this is, you understand why I did it, it's because I believe in you and this is what happened, and I did, so that even he will, I kind of like in a way use that tool to teach my husband how to do that repair system for,
Mhm.
for himself and for my son as well. And I think it's imperative, you know what I mean, because by nature men maybe don't communicate as much, or they're not as sensitive, they're coming across much more authoritarian parenting style, right? So learning
Mhm.
how, like, this is your son and this is how what conscious parenting is, and this is where you need to like adjust and just go back and explain, or I'll be the one sometimes who comes in, gives a little bit more context, you know what I mean,
Mhm.
but then dad does his part. So I do think that's where the family system is really understanding the
Yeah.
dynamic of everyone can go. I know my husband's strengths and I know his weaknesses and I know mine and he knows mine, and so we can actually work together to create the best environment, how to help each other do that with our son, you
Yeah,
know.
it's like which nervous system is going to give you the best possible scenario mixing together to give everybody an opportunity to share, to show up as their highest, like whatever you want to call that, their true self.
Yeah.
And to bring that in there. And I think that that's where, again, knowing our own system becomes the key, because when it was when I finally decided to, like, because I was so focused on working with the kiddos. And I worked at a residential treatment facility, doing the equine partner psychotherapy coaching with them and all these other things. And I realized that once I came into like working through unbridled change, and I was on the flip side and I was working with the kids, I could get those kids and their bridges running like awesome. And then like the parent would come in and I'd realize, oh, there's no bridge. I was like, oh no, I got this kid ready to ask questions, to seek connection, to do all this thing. And like, I remember it was one of the like most horrible, illuminating moments ever, is like this like beautiful being. She was so intelligent. She's this 11-year-old. She was like gorgeous. And this poor mom, no fault of her own, just so burdened by generational trauma and never knew. She had no idea, nobody in her world ever had a bridge, you know? And so why in the world would she know how to give that to kiddo? And kiddo offered a beautiful opportunity for connection, and it actually landed in the mom as a huge threat. I watched her whole field just explode, and I was like, oh, this is, you know, like, let me get in between that kid and this mom in this moment, because it wasn't that she was trying to be mean or anything else. Like her system was literally disintegrating because it had never, it didn't know what to do with the trusted connection. It didn't
Yeah.
know what to do. And so here was this family unit about ready to come back together. Kid was in foster care, mom was, and I realized, I went back to the like DSS. I was like, whoa, it's not ready. I was like, I've got to have the mom. And then we started to really bring in this niche of this reunification where the kid did their track and we did the track with the parent. And then eventually I was like, look, I just need the parent, because the kiddo will follow suit very quickly because they just want to exhale. They just want to be in that loving, supported, compassionate structure. And if I could work with a parent,
Oh,
like,
yeah.
yes, we
Yeah.
can maybe unpack kiddo, but really the place I really needed to be was over here with the parents. And that's when our parenting program just really launched itself, because that was what it is. So we took all of that from the arena and I brought it into the literal arena with the horses, and I brought it into the coaching arena with clients now that I work with from all over. That yes, we're working with the ones that have kids, that bridge to their kids, I always start them with them. Like,
Yes.
and that's where we've got to start.
Yeah. Oh, you're just validating all the things, but it's so true because whenever a parent wants to look at their child's chart, I'm like, we have to look at you. Like, we can't, there is not a set. I mean, unless you really know your chart and you already and you want to look at your child, then we can like talk about you too. But it's exactly to that point, is that they're almost like, if we're doing the work, it's going to naturally set up the environment that we call the goodness of fit for the child
Yeah.
to then right respond. So it's just hugely validating. What a beautiful like way and an example of like, whoa, like why the parent is so much more important than the child. Because if you're setting that up, the child can more easily adapt.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, I do think that working with the children, what amazing work, but it's really cool that you immediately saw, wait a minute, this environment is not, this child's ready, but this environment is not going to support that.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of times when parents have, maybe you find this too, when they have struggles with their children, it is because they're triggered. There's something that is
Yeah.
triggered that they need to work with or learn or heal in themselves. That child's just being a child. They're doing their thing, right?
Yeah, living their life doing what natural kids do, which is butt up
Right.
against rules and ask why, and like push a little bit, and then like, like get a little scared and nervous and need tending to. Like, they're just doing whatever kiddo does. It's our internal programs and survival adaptations that have a unhealed trauma stuck in our system that then flares, because it's like wound meet wounds, and then they resonate with each other and they just keep getting louder and louder, and then they just spin off new wounds and everything else like that. Or like a potential wound in the child, and the the parent always have wanted a rescuer. They wanted somebody to see them in that wound, and so they jump in way too fast, way too hard to be that rescuer that was never there for them. And then it just takes away that child's ability to learn to surf, right? And so it's like either end of the spectrum is problematic. Been there, done that myself, you know what I mean? And so it's like, how do we help clear that out so we can allow their natal promise to come forward? We can allow their pieces to come in. And so, I always share with my clients, like, hey, if you do want to look at their chart, don't look past like aspects to L1. Just don't even do it. Don't go anywhere else. Like, just who is this little being? Like, what are the makeups that they have within them? And maybe if you want to look at the first house, rock it out. But don't be going and looking all over the place, because the real chart to land in first is yours. And you'll be able to then allow there be a beautiful support as their natural progression of life, their life path comes forward, you know?
Absolutely. Yeah, when you say L1, is that
Like Lord of the first house. And so like yeah,
L1 or
ruler of the first house or the
Chiron?
ascendant.
That's L1.
Yeah, sorry.
Oh, okay. So Lord of the first house. That
Yeah.
makes okay, yeah. So many people are helping with reparenting or, trauma healing. The focus around that and the inner child work is all around this similar, approach to healing ourselves first, or, always being on that personal growth journey, because a lot of times it's, coincides with parenting. So it's an ebb and flow. You're on your own journey while you're actually trying to raise another. And I always look at the chart to another way of looking at your moon is like looking at your own experience of your mother, right?
Family.
So
Yeah. Your mom and
your
family. Yeah.
mom,
I mean, that is a universal significator for that, right? And so when you look at that from that universal significator point of view of that sort, like she's going to help you see clearly, like
yep,
that, the why I added in astrology, because I was like, I love the archetypal wheel, right? Like I love everything about it. And I can't even like, I think everybody needs to do their archetypal wheel and cast it, because it teaches you that you can shift and change things. You're not stuck with things. So I like to take people through that before going to the astrology, but most people come to me with astrology under their belt, and then I teach them the archetypal wheel. But if I can do it any way, I like to do it that way, because then they're more willing to see that they have movement with their astrological wheel than they think they do. It's not a static thing, right? Like what
a little bit
the
explain
astro
the
oh, go
archetype.
ahead.
Explain that just a little bit if you can, a difference between the archetypal wheel so people kind of get that.
Yeah, so the archetypal wheel is Carolyn Mace's model for self-development and work. And so in her model, she also loves astrology. And so she based her wheel when she was like given how to bring this work forward of working with soul contracts and patterns and other stuff like that, and how to liberate ourselves from the shadow side and open up to the light, be conscious. Is she took the astrological wheel of the 12 houses. So like the first house is self and health. The second house is money and movable possessions. And you know what I mean? Like all 12 of the houses. And she kind of did a spin on it from the point of view of human development, you know? And from that idea, so the second house, yes, money is in there, and we definitely want to look at our relationship with money and how do we work with money. Um, but we also want to look at like ultimately, if we take money aside, what we give money to is like what we value, right? And what we value about ourselves. And how do we exchange that? How do we exchange our time, our treasure, our talents? And so that would be like, so there's some subtle differences of how she interprets the houses, but if you really feel into them, she's taking out some of the top level layers and really diving into the essence of the
It sounds
houses.
to me a little bit like the development makes sense that it's developmental, because I always say, the houses are very different for children in the developmental process than they are for when you're reading a chart. So, my mentor and I have gone into that, and even her second book she's writing is very much kind of about that, so it's more
Yeah.
through the growth journey and the evolutionary process, from young child, as
Through
opposed.
the different stages. Like third house is developing my mind. What do I think? What do I want to share? What do I want to express? How do I want to communicate with each other? So the first person that's your siblings. And if you don't have siblings, that's
Like,
your yeah, like your local community of whoever your family group and your kinsman is, and so on and so forth. And so when you get up to the ninth house of, spirituality, higher education, foreign travel, there's other people who have other ideas. And then what happens with this set down here? And how does this house influence this one? Well, it's going to butt heads with it at first, but it's trying to crack it open to seeing in a broader way, to supporting myself in shifting some of those adaptations that happen to me in those stages of development. So her wheel is, instead of planets, she bases it off of the archetypal patterns. And so we all have 4 survival archetypes, because that's just it. Like, we got to survive on our school. How did I didn't consciously know to shift to match everybody. My system did that automatically. Well, how did it do it? Because we all have a child, a victim, a prostitute, and a saboteur. And the
Yeah.
prostitute is, everyone always goes, what? And I'm like, look, it's just how we exchange. In every relationship, we are exchanging something. If we value ourselves, we're going to make a good exchange. If we don't value ourselves and we don't believe in our worth, we're not going to make a good exchange. And so what is in that process? And so those are the 4 survival that everybody has. And then there, in her system, you have 8 more that really is core to, you could throw a dart anywhere. So when I was born, I had really bad like ear infections and all these other stuff. And so I had to have tubes, and I had 13 surgeries by the time I was like 12 years old. So the wounded healer, you can find it anywhere in through that medical side. So it wasn't just the 13, you know, you could throw a dart. I also have the teacher, could go figure, could you tell? I like to break things down, and I love to study and to see, and I want to share the things that I've learned with others. So those are like the type of archetypes: a visionary, a mystic, a healer, you know, like there's tons of other ones in there. I just happen to tend towards the mystic
Yeah, of course.
variety a little bit more, but there's like the engineer and the this, that, and the other, you know, like, so there's other ones in there. So in that system, you cast that chart based off of, you go through, you pick your, so it's self-selection of those 8, mix it with the 4, you get 12, and you cast a chart, and where they land is like, gives you insights into, for example, if the wounded healer landed in my first house, how do people see me and view me is through that lens, you know? And so,
A system that does that, like a software system?
nope, you just cast it, you sit in your meditation and you cast it yourself. So
Okay.
it's much more user friendly because you just have to learn, but you do have to learn like the world of archetypes. But if you're doing it with a consultant like me, that's my job, to know all those and help navigate you and kind of interview you and be like, hey, look at this family, you know, like, we'll
Yeah.
help you pick that. Where the astrological wheel, it just is what it is. It's a plugged in where you're born, what time you were born, and voila, this is where the planets were in space and
So
time.
the late, is that still the natal promise? And then these are other layers? Is that the way you approach it too? Like,
Yeah, and so yeah, so in that natal promise and that birth chart, right? Like, that is, gives you insights into, so my main teacher is Michael A. Bryan, and he is an amazing teacher. And he said once that I just absolutely loved it. And when he said it, I was like, that's how I feel about it. And so he's like, the natal chart shows us a representation. It exists to show us the formative factors that we came into this world with, right? Like, not what's going to happen, not what's going to, like, these things were already cooking. They were already present. And this is where we're coming in. And it's here to help show us that in a clear way, because we do all shades of weird trauma goggle things to it. We rewrite history of like what our even ancestral history is, right? Because that's natural. That's what we do. This natal chart, though, it pulls that back and it says, hey, here actually is what you came into this world, both from your own soul and psyche kind of thing, but then also, what is the burdens and the heirlooms that have been passed to you? What are the different things that have been, are going to feed in and impact you if you leave yourself to the lowest common denominator of your field? It's a starting place. It's a launching pad, not a landing place. Does that
I
make
love it.
sense?
Yes, yes, absolutely. I always say that it's like, the journey of your becoming, as you're coming your son, and like maybe this is all helping you kind of understand where the terrain, and the things you have
Yeah.
to or work with in order to reach that. But yes, I really love that perspective and that approach, that it's a launch pad as opposed to a landing pad. Very,
And
very cool.
it's there to help us, right? It's there to be a tool to help us look clearly at what are the influences, what are those combinations that are coming together that are influencing us. Where did they even come from? Because depending on what they are, we can see, oh, this came from the parental line on the maternal side or the paternal side. Like this is what came from my community. This was what came from me into this life. Like we can see that. And then that gives us insight as into where to go. So I think like I remember hearing you say in one of your like it's a fast track, right? Like it does because it puts an X on the spot and then we just go to the spot and follow that, like versus being like, oh my gosh, where do I need to go? Where do I need to start? When you look at generational trauma, you can just sit there and go, yeah, no thanks, and turn around and walk away. But if a piece comes to you, you just work with that piece and
Yeah.
then follow the breadcrumbs from there.
Yeah, absolutely. So if we have time, maybe give us a couple of things, maybe an example of what it's like working with you, and maybe a little bit more about what you do and how you serve. You have these like soulful practices you do. You have a podcast. I was doing some of your soulful practices. I know you have different ways that people can work with you. So I understand the bridal change, and like you're helping them build that connection. It sounds like you're using all kinds of different tools in your toolbox to help them with that. And obviously
Mm-hmm.
each client has a unique story and issues or things they're working with. So naturally you just kind of like work with whatever's going to help them, it's specifically, right? So
Mm-hmm.
is there one sort of like, to get started with the unbridled change,
Ooh,
is there
where to
one
start?
starting point or tip or tool or something that you could offer for people to start contemplating or working with, and then into like how they might want to work with you, if they want to go deeper?
Yeah, so that's a beautiful question. Thank you for that. I wish I had a beautiful answer for that question, but I'm gonna try to give you I really do believe that all roads lead to connection, right? So whether we choose to come through the body and working with like I want to heal my energy system or my physical body, like we can come through that door. And or if we come through the door of the mind, like I want to understand why I think the way I think and why I do what I do, and I want to go attachment style first, and you know what I mean. The heart door, which says I want to open up my heart more to self-compassion and love, or the soul esoteric, you know fun
Yeah.
door too.
Yeah.
Whichever door we come through, or a mix of them, they're all going to lead us back to that heart, right? That central nucleus of the system, and bring us into that. And so I have different programs that will support people whichever one they're walking through. So whether that's the physical healing and the energy work side and learning how to like start to talk to their body as a sacred messenger, for where the kinks and the hose are, of where these trauma adaptations are, we can go through that door. We can go through the door of the mind, of learning to look at our protective mechanisms and talk to them like parts, and like have conversations with them. The same with the heart, like what are those tender spaces within us? But they all require a willingness to talk. And so that is to me the starting point, is a willingness to start to feel comfortable dialoguing with our own system. We're taught to look outside to somebody to tell us what our system is doing. And my approach is like, that's beautiful. I can hold that space as a coach. I can give you that direction. But I decided really early on, I didn't want to be that intuitive that told you what your system was doing. I could give you some hints and be like, hey, I'm feeling over here, and this is kind of what I'm seeing. But ultimately, I want to teach you how to talk to it and to work with it.
Yeah.
Because when you're at home and you're with your kiddo and you feel that energy popping in and you feel a strong like Mars response coming in, you know what I mean? Like with a little smack down of Saturn, and you know what I mean? Like you're not going to have me. Like,
Right.
we want you to be able to see that and talk to it and backtrack where that come from, and be able to have that moment. And so that's the main starting point that I would say for most of the things. And that's where most of my programs then bring you in through that door is so soulful practices. I love that it teaches how to do this. Like, I pull up a quote that maybe talks about fear or love or compassion or something like that. I give you a little short, like 20-minute teaching on that of an idea, kind of, because I have the teacher, I can't take her out. And then I walk you through a process with beautiful Reiki energy holding that space to start to help you feel comfortable talking to your body, to your heart, to your soul, to your mind. And so that's the first place. And then from there, you can go into one of the self-paced courses, like the Enneagram course or the Evolving the Empath course, or, like these different Path of the Seeker, all these different ones that are, you can do it at your own pace. And then if you really want to dive in, then you can jump into one of the other programs where you get to work more one-on-one with me, and in small groups and stuff like that. So it has different levels to kind of meet people where they're at. Ideally, there's tons of free stuff on my website at unbridledchange.org. And you can look in there, peruse around. It just got a new facelift. And then my second book is coming out in September of, not September, hopefully a little bit sooner, maybe summer of 2025. And that will be all about everything we've been talking about here today. Like, how do you befriend the body and talk to the body, to the mind, to the heart and the soul, and build that bridge?
So you said your second book. So what is your first book?
The first book is like the horse piece that we haven't really talked about. So it's called The Horse Cure, and it's a beautiful book. If you want to like hear the stories and how I basically worked with the horses to help reparent those kiddos, it's a gorgeous book, and it walks through those stories of that healing journey. And so it's a beautiful, but it's a how-to if you know how to read it. But it's more meant to like bring you into learning through story, versus guiding you through journeys. So the second book, though, it's like having me sitting there with you. We dive into a little area, we kind of unwind, we ask questions, we push on it, we pull on it, and then you get to experience it. So there's guided meditations, journal. I mean, it's like having me sitting next to you. I'm so excited.
Awesome. Exciting. Yeah. And you had already said unbridledchange.org, is it? Right?
Yeah, it's a nonprofit. And so
Okay.
that's one of the why, like the giving back and the teaching and the free resources are so robust, is because it's part of that is that educational giving back. And
Yeah.
all the services go to help people. So like there's sliding fee scales. And so if somebody can't afford the full rate, like the people who can are helping to give access to the people who might need it more. So it's a beautiful organization. I've just been so humbled to watch it do what it's doing and to be just a steward of it. It's just amazing.
That's awesome. Ooh, how exciting. Okay, great. Well, also, I'm really excited that you'll be a part of our summit in the new year as well. So everyone will be getting to learn more about Michelle and get a little bit more of her teaching. So this was really great. I've had such a joy getting to know you and diving into what you do, and I'm excited to learn more. So hopefully we'll do more chats soon if you're willing to, because there's all kinds of, interesting topics I think we could segue down right now. So, but thank you for today and for letting me introduce you to the community and coming on the show, and we'll definitely have you back.
All right. Thank you so much, Dominique. Thank you for trusting me with your beautiful community. And I can't wait to be on the summit too.
Awesome. My pleasure. I'll talk to you soon.
All right. Bye.
Thanks for listening, and I hope you gained some great astrology insight and inspiration from today's show. I'd love to hear, so drop me a comment or share in a review. Check out the show notes for all the details and links about today's episode, how you can connect with me on social or work with me directly. And don't forget to like, follow, and subscribe. Oh, and for my moms out there, be sure to join my private Conscious Parenting with Astrology Moms group on Facebook. Come join a growing community of like-minded mamas supporting each other in the hardest job in the world, with the help of astrology. Hope to see you over there. Take care and keep nurturing the nature, friends. I'll see you on the next episode.